And now it's become a battle between George and I about what should get pruned, the hydrangea or the Japanese maple. And I had forgotten to put out our fountain, so George is getting it back up and running. Mr. Miyagi. Someone had mentioned that they use these copper discs in their bird baths to help keep the water clearer. I actually found the perfect shirt for George recently. This week we got some things around the garden done and I took some footage, so come along and hang out with us. Hi, it's Steph. Welcome back to our garden. This video is going to be a compilation of a few things that we were able to get done in the garden this week. So it was pretty warm. We did have rain one day and some cool pockets of time where we were able to get outside, do a little bit of pruning, some weeding, and I even got a couple of things planted. Now you might recall back in May, I had shown you a new variety of lavender that I was going to trial in my garden called Summer Serenade. And initially I had planned on planting it here along the path that we created when we were working on our backyard project. But ultimately, I decided against it because lavender only blooms for such a short period of time. So I ended up purchasing the Walker's Low Junior Catmint, and that is what I lined both sides of the path with. And they bloomed for a really long time, looked beautiful, and just recently I did give them a bit of a trim so that I can get a second flush out of them. But I still wanted that lavender planted here in this area, so I gave it some thought. And this week, I ended up planting it right here in the second row on this side of the path, right behind the catmint and in between the pink Dawn Spires salvia that I had picked up on clearance at Lowe's a few weeks back. So here is that row of lavender. And it had just finished blooming a few weeks back. I gave it a trim and it has some really beautiful silvery gray foliage and it should bloom beautifully next year. I don't know that I'll get a second flush out of it this year, but ultimately I'm really happy that I decided to go ahead and plant them in this area because as you walk down the path when it's warm in the spring and summer, you're going to get that beautiful fragrance and I'm really happy about that. Some other things that I planted recently. I had picked up a beautiful variety of penstemon over at the Home Depot. I showed it when I did my garden center tour and it's right here. I actually have the name in my pocket so that I wouldn't forget. Let me see here. It's called the Mountain Treats Penstemon. Such a gorgeous color. When I saw it on the rack at the store, I thought that they were foxgloves from afar because they have the really pretty kind of bell-shaped bloom that looked like a foxglove. And it has this gorgeous light pink and then the center is, the throat of it is white with a little bit of a purple striping. The pollinators love it. And so I planted it here in this raised bed. Ultimately, I think I want to plant it in this area as well. But for now, I planted it there just so that I could get watered and live until I can get to planting it. But recently, I also made another change in this area. Now, during my July garden tour, I mentioned that I had dug up a Montauk daisy that I had in this corner because I was just done with it. It had gotten really large. By the end of the season, it always flopped and something ate it last season. I don't know if it was deer or rabbits, but ultimately I dug it up and I planted a Russian sage, which I'm really happy with. This is the Little Spires Russian sage and it's supposed to be a more compact variety. And because I was starting to like the Russian sage this week, I ended up going to the nursery and I picked up 2 more so that I would have a drift of 3 planted along this bed. And when I was there, they did have the Little Spires variety, but I found another variety that I was really intrigued by. It's called Prime Time. It has a more dense habit. It blooms sooner than some of the other varieties, and it's also relatively compact at only 30 to 32 inches in height and in width. So now I have 2 varieties planted here. I have 2 of the Prime Time Russian sage and 1 of the Little Spires Russian sage. And over time, I'll be able to compare them to see which one I like better. But I am really happy with the colors in this bed here. In prior years, I had some Hydrangea in here, some really bright pink phlox. And this year when we redid this area, I kept the color palette really soft in light shades of peaches and purples and pinks, and I'm really loving it. In fact, this rose that we also planted this spring, the Flavorette Honey Apricot, not only is it really fragrant, look how beautiful these blooms are. It has been blooming really well for me, shooting out these clusters of blooms here and there. And so far, I really like it. Now I do have to spray it because this area is frequented by deer and bunny. In fact, the bunnies ate down my new clematis that I planted the other day. I think it was the bunnies, and I had to put one of these mesh waste baskets that I get from the Dollar Tree over it because look at that. It was just starting to climb my arbor, and I'm so bummed that that happened. So George is actually going to help me cut a piece of chicken wire so that I can make a bigger enclosure, a taller one, so that it can help the clematis be protected while still starting to grab on to the arbor here. I have some fishing line for it to climb that we had weaved in and out. So anyhow, that was quite a bummer. So the Russian sage I know is going to be deer and rabbit proof, and the foxglove's pretty good. The coneflowers that I have in here, they did eat the ones that were down at the bottom, but they leave the ones that are up higher. The deer don't touch them, it's the bunnies. But another thing that came back, the gladiolas. So several years ago, I had planted some gladiola bulbs in this area. I have been pulling some out that were colors I didn't like, but every year I still get a couple that show up. And this year I had two in this really beautiful kind of peachy orange color. Look at that. It looks like it's glowing. It's so beautiful. I absolutely love it. So this was such a awesome surprise this week. This one is already done, but then another one came up in the exact same color, which was so nice. And one other thing I want to show you in this back garden is that in my raised bed garden, a hollyhock. Now hollyhocks typically are biennials. You start them 1 year through seed and they'll work on root development and foliage. But this one will bloom the first year. So I started this indoors, actually with winter sowing. And look at it, it's so beautiful. It's called the Champagne Hollyhock. And I did have some planted in this area outside the fence last year, but the bunnies ate it. So now I just grow it inside the fence and it's really pretty. One last thing I want to show you in this area is my sugar tip rose of Sharon. This shrub we planted about 3 years ago now in this space, and it is doing so well, and it's beginning to bloom. Look at these beautiful rosette-like blooms in this soft pink. Not only are the flowers really pretty, but it also has variegated foliage. So it's green with a hint of like a creamy yellow around the edges. Just a really pretty shrub. And it gets, I want to say, about 4 to 5 feet in diameter and about the same in height. And so it's going to really fill in this space. And I really love it. I think it's such a beautiful plant when you come into this area. George is going to share something with us.
Yeah, so we have a bunch of inclined slopes in our garden. And one thing that I do a lot is I create a mini retaining wall out of stones that I find on the property. So right here you can see this is a bihu that actually had a lot of dieback. We weren't sure if it was going to live, so we put it here in this section. It's doing great. But you can see there's some rocks here, and we do this all over the place. We have some behind a hinoki. But essentially what you want to do is use rocks or something that isn't going to break down. Like I wouldn't use any logs or anything like that. So you can see that with the rocks here, you won't be losing your soil down the slope, down the hill.
Under this Fireglow Japanese maple, I planted some tiarella earlier in the season that I had picked up, I believe, at Lowe's. Really pretty color with this red veining that picks up on the Fireglow, but it's getting a little sparse. It was nice and full earlier in the season, and this is a perfect example of what happens to both heuchera and tiarellas in my garden. They just get smaller and smaller until they disappear. It did bloom, so I'm cleaning up all of the bloom stalks in hopes that it sends the energy back into the roots of the plants and it puts out more foliage. So we'll see how that goes. I had a bucket of weeds that I was just deadheading things and putting weeds into. Well, it rained a few days ago and the weeds got wet. Well,
the bucket was halfway full with water.
Yes, it was. And I took that bucket and I dumped it into the wheelbarrow, and it was like decaying weeds with rainwater.
It actually is the worst smell I think I've smelled in my life.
It's so bad.
And it stunk so bad.
So if anybody is weeding and they have it in a bucket that doesn't have any drainage and it rains, be careful.
Our next task is going to be trimming this bamboo that is pretty shaggy and picking all of these weeds that are growing between our pavers. There's this one specific weed, spurge, that is everywhere, and it's the one we deal with the most in our garden. So George has started over here by the doors, and I'm going to start over on the patio. Is it hard to pull?
No,
Not too
it's not
bad.
bad. It's the root.
Always want to get the roots.
Yep.
Yes.
You know, when we actually try to grow things that aren't weeds, they don't grow.
Yeah. Weeds,
Right.
everybody can grow some really
Everybody
good
can
weeds.
relate, yeah.
We're going to start pruning this bamboo, and typically I let George take care of the cutting and pruning in our garden because I get a little aggressive, right?
So I've never actually pruned this bamboo. I have no idea. We're just trying to get the flop out. So I'm just gonna take this front layer of bamboo and see what happens.
It's gotten pretty dense. This bamboo grew really well. This is a clumping variety.
Oh yeah, this is gonna take a while.
Yeah.
Because there's so many
Canes.
shoots.
Shoots.
Yeah.
Yep. So we're going to work on this, but I often get questions about this bamboo, and it is not a running bamboo, which can be more invasive. This is actually a clumping variety, but to be on the safe side, I did go ahead and put it in a planter. And it's been here, I want to say about 3 years now, and it has grown well. It actually stays mostly evergreen throughout the winter. It's called, I want to say it's called Fulgida.
Gizia something?
What did you say?
Didn't they say, I think Gizia is the name of it.
Something, Giza, maybe. Fulgida Giza. I'll look it up. All right, the name is actually called Hydrangea rufa. So we're a little off, George.
Yeah, it sounds like Giza.
Yeah, close. Hydrangea rufa. That's the name of this variety of clumping bamboo.
Close enough.
It's looking so much better. So George has been cutting at the bamboo. See, he's like the master pruner in our garden. When I go to it, I end up making things look not good.
The only thing that I'm not too excited about is that it does look a little sparse over here.
No, it'll grow in.
But yeah, that's because we don't have the flop anymore.
Yeah, but you can actually see the planters again.
Yeah.
They're nice and tidy. You didn't
And if
take
you're
off-
sitting on the bench, now you can actually see
Yes.
more view. Yeah.
It looks good. So here's our pile, which we're not going to put in our woods, which is where usually we put all of our garden clippings, because just in case it roots, I don't want it to become a problem. So I'm actually going to bag it up, and we're going to dispose of it with the yard waste. I'm all done cleaning up the patio for today, and it turned out really nice. I finally placed my bistro set here in the corner. This is a really pretty sedum I often get questions about. It looks almost like eucalyptus. It's called October Daphne, or Sedum Siboldi. But I swept everything up. It had gotten quite messy over here with leaves. I was able to put out my plant stands that I bought last season and set my plants on them. I have a begonia. This is the Space Age Europa, and then my hens and chicks, which need to grow in a little bit, but they were getting shaded kind of under the bench there, so it was time to organize. And the bamboo turned out so nicely. George did a beautiful job. Look at that. You can actually see the stems now, and it's just more tame. I definitely needed to be done. And while I've been doing all of this, George has been making room for our bench. I have a little, it's like a faux concrete bench, some kind of fiberglass material that I like to put in this path every year. But as our Japanese maples grow, they are starting to kind of take over that space. So George is kind of like limbing up the canopy so that there's room for our bench to sit.
I didn't take off much, and we've been pruning this every year. So here's the bench, and now you can see if I sit on here, I have room above my head, but I made sure to leave some of these overhanging branches.
Yeah, we want it to kind of touch over time
Yeah.
to make like a little enclosure, a
Right.
canopy.
Yep. On some of them, the caliper on some of these branches were a little bit thick, so instead of trying to use my pruners, I use these loppers to make a nice smooth cut.
It's a ratcheting lopper, so it works
Yep.
really well for thicker branches.
Yep. But I didn't take off much.
And anything
look at that.
smaller, you just used your pruners for.
Exactly. Yeah.
So he really just went through. You don't have to like prune them at certain times. Japanese maples can be pruned anytime.
Yeah.
So you go through often.
And this
take-
isn't a real hard prune. I'm not
No.
really going down. I just took a few branches off, not much. But
it
yeah,
looks
I
really
think
good.
yeah, thanks.
I love
Yep.
this. This is such a nice little garden moment.
Yep.
And I had forgotten to put out our fountain. So George is getting it back up and running. This is a DIY fountain
Yeah,
that we created.
actually created this 3 summers ago, and it's really simple. This is a vessel that you purchased somewhere, not sure where, but Home
I think it
Depot
was
or
at-
something.
Maybe Home Depot.
Yeah, but it's really deep. But the key is it can't have any drainage holes because it needs to hold all your water. So I put one of these plastic planters at the bottom just to take up some space. And then I got another one, this green one, to also take up some space.
You inverted the one at the bottom, right?
Yeah, I did. Yep.
Just like that.
Yep.
It created a riser.
Exactly. And then I put this one here that was just below the surface of the planter. And then here is the pump. This was purchased on Amazon.
Yeah.
This is just like a universal.
Solar pump.
Yeah, it's a solar pump.
A solar fountain and pump.
Yep. So this is going to sit in here, and we're going to feed the wiring to the solar panel through the bottom of the planter.
Through one of the drainage holes.
Yeah, I'm going to use this one right here on the side.
And George drilled a hole on the side of the planter.
Yep.
So that now that wire is going to come through that hole.
It's right here.
Yep.
So now we'll put this wire through this hole. And we have a video explaining exactly what we did. We can link it down below. Okay.
So it's right there.
Yep. And then this is some like chicken wire that we cut up just so it can sit on top of the green here.
So it's going to prevent leaves and debris from getting into our water.
It's actually going to hold our rock.
It's also going to hold our rock.
Yep.
Exactly.
So I'm just going to feed this through
the tube.
Through the middle. Like that. I'll put this back on.
These are some beach rock or like a river rock that we actually purchased a bag of at the Home Depot as well. And I really like the way it looks. So we're going to place them around that spigot, which will help keep it upright.
All right, now we're just gonna fill up the vessel. And I'm gonna fill it up pretty much until it gets to the metal, the chicken wire, the lathe, and then I'm gonna stop. So we're gonna fill it up right till about here.
George, do you think we should place it before you finish filling it?
Yeah,
so it's not
because
too
it's
heavy?
gonna be heavy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's still light. So this is where we had it last time, the last few seasons. All right, that's stable like that.
So we got our DIY fountain up and running.
Yep, and I'm gonna put this end here and drop it down.
We've only had the solar panel charging for about 5 minutes. Throughout the day, this area does get a little bit of sun, so it'll continue to charge, and then that stream will be a little bit stronger.
Yep.
So this works really well in an area where you don't have electricity and you want a little bit of a fountain and to enjoy the sound of water. A DIY fountain is a great option, and you can make it pretty easily just getting a planter that doesn't have any drain holes. The next thing on the to-do list is to shape up these boxwood that we have in these planters by our back door. Now, I planted these here about 3 years ago now, and I love having evergreens in containers because they're cold hardy. They stay in these containers outdoor all year round, and they just had all of their spring flush just in the last couple of months. So now they're looking a little shaggy and need to be shaped up again. And George did this for us last year, and because he takes his time, he does a really good job with it. So I asked him if he could shape these again this year, and so he's working on that, and then he's going to do this one here as well. So this is the before, and then we will share what the after looks like. George is doing a really good job on that boxwood, but I wanted to share something with you. I got the cutest pillow covers for our outdoor furniture. They have hydrangeas on them and Canterbury bells. Look at this. So that's a hydrangea. And then we have Canterbury bells here, so pretty. And then I believe that might be hellebore. I was so pumped when I discovered a few years ago that you can just get covers for your toss pillows that you can take off and wash, and they take up a lot less room in storage versus getting new pillows anytime that you want to change out toss pillows, right? But I really love these floral cushion covers for the toss pillows. I think they're beautiful. Mr. Miyagi, with a little hand snip there. You're doing a beautiful job. Look how nice and round it's getting.
So it's been about 5-10 minutes?
Yeah, not even, about 10 minutes tops.
I think I'm good with that one.
I think it looks good.
Yeah.
Because it's like if you cut too much, like a haircut, you can't go back and glue it, right? George is all done pruning up our boxwood, and they turned out really nice. I wish that we had one of those little small handheld, you know, the little battery ones that you can prune.
Oh, the hedge trimmer.
Yes, the little battery operated.
Large one.
Yeah, we have a 24-inch, so that wouldn't do it. But we used hand pruners, little snips, actually floral snips, and they worked great.
It took like 10 minutes per shrub.
It's because you have the magic touch. You're very patient with the pruning job. Yeah, I love them. They look great. Here is this beautiful hedge of little lime hydrangeas, and I absolutely love it. There are actually 3 planted here, but they have grown so much that they're kind of all growing into one another now, and you can't really tell how many there are. But this one here on the end is getting completely covered by this Katsura Japanese maple. And now it's become a battle between George and I about what should get pruned, the hydrangea or the Japanese maple. I say that the Japanese maple needs to be sheared back a bit, limbed up and shortened this way so that we can get some light to my hydrangea. And he thinks that I should prune all of the hydrangea so that they're all an even size.
Well, actually, I think we should remove this hydrangea.
No.
Keep 2, because if I prune this Katsura on the left, it's just going to be off balance. It's not going to look right. I know right now it's a bit shaggy. It does need some pruning.
And I think you should just prune it on both sides so that it'll be more even. It could be more like a little totem pole.
I think this is where we
disagree. We disagree. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. Should George trim the tree or should he prune the hydrangeas? Let us know. But here you can see that there is a few that had flopped down. A couple of you have asked me over the years whether or not they flop with the rain. In general, they're pretty strong. You can see this one here at the end is nice and upright. So typically they stay nice and upright, but we have had a ton of rain this week. In fact, this is why we've done like pockets of gardening, and you'll see in this video, it's a compilation, because when we can get things done, we come out here. But this bottom piece here, you can see is starting to flop a little towards the ground. And there are some years where they don't flop at all. In fact, I bought these stakes last year thinking that I would use them to hold up these hydrangeas if I needed them, and I didn't. They were sitting with the tags on them in the basement. But because we had 2 days of heavy rain just this week, you can see that this here is a little bit droopy. So what I'm going to try to do is lift this branch up and stick this stake underneath. Now this is a 15-inch half circle and a 30-inch height, so it should work well to stake this up. So George is going to put the camera on the tripod and help me out with this. You can kind of see that big branch. Yeah. Oh, it's better.
It's better? Yeah.
Yeah, good. I think that's good enough.
Okay, then do another one here.
Yeah. Yeah, looks good. So it is better. I wouldn't say that they held them perfectly because they're pretty heavy, but at least they're not on the ground now. You can see that it filled out this gap a little bit better. A couple of weeks ago when we filmed the July garden tour, these firelight tidbits had just started to bloom. And look at them now. They have really filled out and they're looking beautiful. They have been here for about 4 years now, so they're getting pretty mature, and I just love the way they look here in this area. When we did that tour, we had a couple of questions about the fountain, whether or not it was up and running, and it is, but I typically shut it off during garden tours. While I love the sound of the water, it can sometimes be something that I'm competing with when I'm talking in this area, so we do keep it off for tours. And the other question was whether or not we had to top it up often or refill it. We top it up about once a week. It never goes fully empty, but you'll lose some water when the water from the top bowl goes down to the bottom. You can see that some of it splashes and it will come out of the bowls. And also with evaporation from the summer heat. So we just top it up here and there. And one last thing that I wanted to show you that I'm trying, it's new to me. Someone had mentioned that they use these copper discs in their bird baths to help keep the water clearer. And I can see the idea because it's said that sometimes those real copper pennies, if you throw them in there, it helps. And this says that it's 99.9% pure copper. So I purchased 4 of them. I put 1 in the bottom bowl, 1 in the top bowl, and 1 in each of our 2 bird baths. So far, the water looks pretty clear, but it's only been about a week, so I will report back and let you know how those work. But if you've used them, let me know what your experience has been. And the last thing I want to talk about in this area is my Joe Pye weed. Now you can see that it's just starting to put on its bloom clusters. It's a really great perennial for mid to late summer. The pollinators love it and nothing bothers it. The deer or the rabbit, they leave them alone, and it's doing really well. But it is pretty tall. In fact, when you come into the driveway and the garage, you can't even see that there's a fountain here. And it's a pretty good sized fountain. So my plan is to move that somewhere else eventually. But recently I found a smaller variety of Joe Pye weed. So this one is called Little Joe, but it's actually quite tall. So I think it ends up somewhere between 4 and 6 feet in height. But this week at the nursery, I found a really compact version of Joe Pye weed. So this one is called Little Pye. And I'll show you the tag. That's what it looks like. And this one only gets 12 to 14 inches in height and 12 inches in width. It also likes that moist soil, and it can do sun to part shade. So I have an area picked out for this. I'll show you when I plant it in an upcoming garden tour, but I was happy to find a more compact version because you can see, while it is beautiful, this Joe Pye weed is pretty large. So it would be ideal for like the back of a border, where this one you can use either in the front or the middle of a border. And it's already starting to bloom too. Here's a bloom cluster. I actually found the perfect shirt for George recently, and this is exactly why he prunes all of our trees and shrubs, because he goes slow and steady, and it says since 1994, which is when we started dating. Yep. And look at the back. It's a bonsai, and it says patience, which he has a lot of. Nature doesn't hurry, yet everything is accomplished slow and steady. See, George, this is how you earn your title of the master pruner in our garden. Yep. These containers here on my back patio are looking absolutely gorgeous. This is pretty much peak at the moment. So I just wanted to take a moment to appreciate how pretty they look and how gorgeous these hot colors are, something that I never thought that I would actually love in my garden, and I have enjoyed so much in containers. But you can see that this week we did a couple of chores around the garden. We got some pruning, some planting done, and some other odd things. And that's pretty much how it goes when you're in midsummer gardening. You just do a little bit often, and eventually things get done. So let me know what you've been working on in your garden. We're heading into August now, so we're still going to have a lot of pretty things to look at. Those late summer bloomers, the Joe Pye weed is on its way. My hardy hibiscus will start blooming soon. And then all of the panicle hydrangeas will start picking up that gorgeous pink coloration that they get with the cooler temperatures of late summer here in the Northeast. So still a lot to look forward to in the garden. And last week I was supposed to have a garden tour of my garden for the local garden club, but we had rain, so it got canceled, which hopefully it will happen this week. It got rescheduled. And if it does, I'm going to go ahead and take you along as I set up for that. So stay tuned, and hopefully that happens. But thank you so much for spending your time with us, and we'll catch you in the next one.